I jumped into what I've called the self-improvement doom loop, where you're constantly looking at ways to improve nutrition and your fitness, but everything's connected to productivity. Even meditation, it went from a spiritual thing to then it turned into like, I'm doing all this stuff so I can be more productive and keep up with the rat race.
Today we are talking to Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter, guitar, and banjo player Amythyst Kiah. She is a solo artist, has released records on Rounder Records. She also is a part of the supergroup Our Native Daughters, which includes Layla Michaela, Allison Russell, and Rhiannon Giddens. And she has performed or recorded with people like Moby, Billy Strings, S.G. Goodman, and Butch Walker, also alum from The Other 22 Hours.
Yeah, and this conversation centers around, I guess you could say, all things ego, whether that's ego leading yourself, ego towards your career, towards existence, a lot about slowing down and an intentionality and really having a clear perspective on your approach and your goals. And for being such a heart-centered, honest conversation, I would have to say that we maybe use the word optimized more than we've used in all 144 other conversations combined here. So we hope you enjoy our conversation with Amythyst Kiah.
So we like to start with just how are you today? And that's a how are you really? And where are you physically and creatively?
Yeah. Well, today actually I'm feeling pretty good. Recently, in the past year and a half, I've been getting into sync writing and having my music either used for sync or writing for it. And right now I'm actually working on a song for a couple of scenes in a movie that's in production right now. So yeah, I've just been working on that for the past 2 or 3 days. And even though I love touring, and I love sharing songs with people, back in 2020 when I had my label debut and there was that whole year of COVID where I was at home and I was making live performance videos for online shows and stuff. And when the album dropped and then we all went back on the road sooner than expected, it was the most that I'd ever been on the road and also the most exposure I'd ever gotten as an artist. So between the press and between all the shows, and also was doing a lot more full band shows. So it was a lot of things happening at once and it was very overwhelming. And while there were a lot of cool opportunities that came about, it was also really mentally exhausting, and I experienced quite a bit of burnout. And I feel like everybody that I was meeting and working with was also barely hanging on for dear life. So it was this very sort of we're all doing stuff. I kind of thrive better when I'm at a slower pace and I can take my time. And when I feel the pressure to have to speed up and keep up a neck break speed, I find ways to make it work. But, you ultimately end up taking shortcuts and making decisions in regards to my health that maybe aren't the best decisions, not getting enough sleep, not drinking enough water, drinking too much coffee, smoking weed to relax, whatever, just all of these different things to regulate my emotions. Everything is almost done compulsively as opposed to being able to sit down and really think, because you're this is my chance. There's more eyes on me than ever. I got to do all these things. And again, on the surface, there's some really great pictures, some great outfits, some great videos. And it's not to say that there wasn't any enjoyment with any of those things, but it was just the mental toll that it was taking on me. It was just not a sustainable way for me to thrive as a creative person. In fact, it was zapping me in my creativity because I was so exhausted. And so what I like about doing projects like writing for sync or writing for film is I feel like my happy place, my true happy place, is when I'm in the studio and when I'm writing and creating. That's where I really get my energy. And I think it's because I'm more of an introverted personality. Ever since I was a kid, I love being alone in a room with my instruments, with my laptop or whatever it is that I'm using to make music, and just let my curiosity take me to different places and try different things. And that's something that I get to do, with sync writing. So I see myself down the line doing a lot more of that so I can have more of that studio time, because it also doubles as recharging time in a lot of ways. So then when I do go out and tour, it's a very revitalizing thing. And I go out on the road and then I have, new songs or I have new things to talk about, and it makes it more exciting.
Anywhere from 30% to 80% of what I do in a year is writing for sync.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And I got into it I was spending a lot of time on the road as a drummer, and it was a lot of like waiting for my phone to ring. And then a lot of like this time of year, Thanksgiving to the end of February, like questioning every life choice I've made because like it's really slow and,
Yeah.
I literally stumbled into doing it by agreeing to write an ungodly amount of songs in a year for a friend's music library at 1 a.m. after 2 bottles of wine. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. Totally. And he texted me the next morning, like 9 a.m. like, cool, dude, you want to do this? And I was like, oh, sure.
Yeah.
But it helped. It was like writing for sync, writing for placements is like a kind of a weird frame to use, but it's also can be inspiring.
Yeah.
Like writing from that different lens, that different approach, having so many kind of like limitations on what you're doing and how can you express yourself and your creativity and your art in that framework. But yeah, so everything you just shared kind of like really resonated with me. It was like it was another outlet. It was a way that I could almost have like open creativity in a way and just like, so I'll start this without the pressure. How's this going to come out? What labels is going to like, I'm going to make this and hopefully it finds a home. And if it doesn't, I got to make it with these people and it was fun. And
yeah, the exact experience that I had was, at least with writing for sync, it's like, it's a way to be able to tap into why I wanted to do music as my full-time job in the first place, is because of moments like that. And like at the core of my curiosity, I guess it's one of those things where I find myself so open to ideas that I kind of end up getting choked up and stifled because I'm thinking of all the things I could possibly do. So the thing about sync writing is having those parameters of like, here's the scene, here's the kind of sound we want, here's some reference tracks. Like my first time ever doing that, I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then I end up listening to new music that I maybe necessarily wouldn't have found, otherwise. And it creates that sense of structure to then feel, I guess, more free to explore because I have like some direction. And it's kind of giving me ideas of like, moving forward. Because with writing for my own stuff, it started out as being this very cathartic, emotional, confessional kind of thing. So a lot of the songwriting was purely inspiration from my emotional turmoil. And once I started, going to therapy and like sorting things out, and it came time to write Still and Bright, I was like, well, I can't really write from that place anymore because I'm not in consistent emotional turmoil in that same way. So I basically had to refigure out how am I going to write songs because like that I didn't realize how reliant I was on that emotional turmoil aspect. And so getting into co-writing and then getting into sync writing, those were those two ways that I was able to having that collaborative aspect, which is something that I didn't really explore because my songs were so personal that I didn't want anybody else involved. And when I got to the point where I wasn't so self-absorbed in my emotions and then I wanted to sing about observations or things that I'm interested in, then it became a lot easier to sit down with another songwriter and be like, hey, this is an idea I've been bouncing around, would like to write a song about it. Here's a few lines. And it makes it easier to collaborate when it's something I'm interested in, but it's not so personally tied to me that like, I don't want anybody else looking at it. So, So it's been a really interesting, like self-exploration and evolution of my art and my abilities and what I'm, able to do. And I'm no longer terrified that I don't have anything else to say because there was a moment where I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? So overall from the creative aspect, I've been feeling a lot more certain about, what I'm able to do moving forward.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me how much freedom can come with some parameters and boundaries. And we're all different in any given phase or era of our life. We might have a different reaction, but like sometimes a blank page can be so crippling. Just like, I'm like paralyzed by the number of decisions I have to make. So when we have some decisions made for us, all of a sudden there's this space to play, which is we have 2 young kids. And I'm like, we always are kind of relating how much we're learning by observing these children we're raising, how helpful it is, these things that we lose as we get older, and seeing children, like how much boundaries and structure and routine builds safety for them to then be able to truly play with so much freedom. And I think it's the same thing for adults of just, when we have a little bit of a box, and some people might actually find that stifling as well, but it's so fascinating when you discover, this really helped me. I don't have to make all these decisions right now, or something's not like burning to get out, and maybe that time will come again. But the different processes of our creativity are just really interesting for me. And it's exciting to hear that you're becoming aware of a new process for yourself.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm probably botching this story from ringing around in my head for years, but one of my favorite stories of that is when Brian Eno was talking about when he was making music for airports, like his big famous record, which is very long form, very long compositions and all of that. He was stuck creatively and felt like he was in a corner and didn't really know where to go. And he was contracted by Microsoft to make like the startup sound for Windows, which is like three seconds of music. And he said that like just completely like opened him up. He just dropped everything he was doing on this like long form record that he was making and focused on like 3 seconds of music and like made it this whole thing. And he's like focusing on such a micro level. Then when he went back to something more long form, he had all these ideas and he kind of just freed himself up because he had such limitation for whatever the month or whatever that he spent on that.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Right?
I had no idea that he wrote the stuff for music.
Yeah, right. After like I grew up hearing that sound. Like,
yeah,
and it's like, oh, cool. I didn't know I was a Brian Eno fan.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious, I want to go back to, you mentioned, when your solo record came out and like you were having all these opportunities, and it's part of our mission, I think, is sometimes to normalize the farce of just how fulfilling surface level success actually is. That that we kind of, when we all decide, I want to make music, this thing I love, my career, we can think these are the things that are going to make it feel good, being recognized. And I think part of this is being able to pull the curtain back and be like, there's so much nuance of the toll that it can take, and that maybe it feels too exposing or like you don't get enough break. And one of the big things I always think about is the pressure that comes. You start to get a little bit of success, and like right on the heels is, oh shit, how do I keep it? How do I keep doing it? How do I make sure I don't lose any opportunity? And that feels awful to me.
Yeah.
And I've had my own processes of, like, I put a record out in 2019 that was I signed with a record label, and it was getting all this great press and it was getting buzz, and I signed with a big booking agent, and it was feeling like, yes, everything's happening. And I was like, yes. And I remember that pressure of like, oh shit, this whole year is going to be booked out on tour, and I have to figure out how to write another record because I got to write the record now. And then COVID hit and all this other stuff happened in my life. We had a baby. My mom had a stroke. Like, personal life took over. I like put out another record and it didn't get as much attention. And then it started to feel like everything was slipping through my fingers. And I've gone through all this process of being like, that 2019 buzz might not have been the key either. There might be a middle ground of what is actually fulfilling for me as an individual. So I'm curious if you've had a similar process, recalibrating, and also being in a community of people that are getting different levels of success that you get to witness up close and see. I'm thinking of like Allison Russell and how much her life has changed the last several years. And I'm curious if you've had your own process of recalibrating.
Yeah. Before I ended up signing with the label, up until that point when I'd been playing shows and the bit of touring I was doing, because a lot of the time that I was touring, I'd always had like a part-time job, and I also was in school and like a student worker. And then when I tried grad school, was like a graduate assistant. So I was always like doing multiple things to like stay afloat, to make money. And the big thing was, I don't care about being famous or being rich. I just want to live comfortably making music. I want to be able to, have my own car, have a house, have a whole thing. And then that's what I want. And 2020 into 2021, opportunities started happening where I was actually able to do those things over the course of 2 or 3 years. But while I was able to get those things, I then was also, I was on social media. I was meeting all these different artists. I was doing all these different things. And I started to constantly compare what I was doing and my success with other people. I was starting to do that. And I thought I was immune to doing that. I thought that that wouldn't ever get to me. And so then I started to adopt this kind of rat race, climb the ladder mentality. And I feel like the music industry, and while obviously, I was in the Americana side of things, which is not anywhere close to being as predatory as other music industries, the comparison game still can happen regardless of what genre, I guess, you're in, at least for me. And I found myself at one point, I had to unfollow everybody on my Instagram because I had an instance where, I had like financial letdowns during Omicron when a lot of shows were rescheduled. And I took over 40 flights in 2022 because I was opening for someone and I had to follow the bus and all of their shows got rescheduled and I had a band. So we had to fly to all these different places just to get to where they were. And then I had a European and a UK tour that all got rescheduled and less people came to the shows because a lot of people couldn't make the new date. And then I had to do a bunch of flights because the routing was crazy and like losing money on 3 tours. And then I had another issue that I won't get into because I don't want to like call anybody out. But between all of that and then the other internal issue that happened financially within my own team, I had this whole moment of like everything that I've worked so hard for, I'm now seeing it slip through my fingers as you described it. And that's when it got to the point where I was like, I have to unfollow everybody because I'm seeing people getting buses and going to Australia and going to, all these different places. And I'm just like, I have to pay off debts and build back my bank account. I developed envy, which is like, it's so painful because it's like, I wanted to be happy for everybody, but like, it was so hard for me to be happy when I was dealing with this pain of like feeling like I've really lost something. So over the course of the past year and a half, up until now, I've been doing mostly solo shows. And like when we released Still and Bright, it didn't get any of the buzz like Wary and Strange did. And then also while I was touring, even though, I had this record that had a full band sound, it's a very like cinematic kind of sounding record. And I couldn't afford to do a band tour for the record. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to do solo. And while I, for years, did solo shows and have developed accompaniment on my guitar and on my banjo to make my songs solo as dynamic as possible, I was like, well, everybody saw me with bands before. And that's what people have seen me with. And are people going to respond to me playing solo shows when I have this big sound on my record? Are people going to be disappointed? Are people going to show up? Like I just had all this doubt and feeling frustrated that budget is what was keeping me from doing what I felt like I needed to do for the record. For a long time, I played folk festivals and performing arts centers. And with that, you get a pretty decent sized guarantees and you have a built-in audience. But my intent was I wanted to play venues and really get to the people that are really, really into what I'm doing and find my audience. And over the course of the past 2 years, I've gone to, the West Coast, Midwest, and the Northeast. And I'm playing like these, usually they're like either 100 seat or 250, 300 capacity rooms. And every time I'd go back to those same places, more and more people are coming. And I, again, still playing solo sets. And going to the merch table after the shows, people have said, I love you by yourself and with your band. One of the things I also did was I, talked more about the songs in between because there wasn't a band. I was like, well, maybe this is an opportunity to do like a VH1 storytelling kind of vibe where I talk about stuff in between songs. And people loved hearing the stories behind the songs. Like it did not really seem to faze people that were coming to see me solo. They said they actually really appreciated hearing just me and the instrument because then they get to hear what the core song was before everything else was added on. So it really created this very intimate connection with the audience. I don't know. It was incredibly fulfilling. And it also was my first step into realizing, you know what? It's okay to slow down. I don't have to keep up with the buzz from before. There's nothing wrong with slowing down and having this experience, and I made my own sort of life changes and really kind of got back to basics and got myself more grounded, not attaching myself to the external wins or, allowing my emotions to be attached to whether or not I'm quote unquote successful or not. But why did I get into music in the first place, and returning to that original premise? And once I started realizing that I actually have the things that I wanted 5 years ago, I had the things that I wanted. So why don't I just start enjoying them, So it's been a process to get to the mental state that I'm in now. But yeah, just coming to that realization that buzz and success and flattery and people wanting to give you things and send you things and want to be near you in whatever capacity, all of that stuff is fleeting. And what remains is the kind of value that you've built within yourself and within the people closest to you. That's what's the most important thing. Whether or not people know who I am or not, that's completely out of my control, and it always will be. And honestly, for the past month, I've not had social media on my phone, and that has been so amazing.
It really is.
It's just a matter of, finding those different ways in different aspects of my life to try to not feel like I need to be so connected to everything all the time, because our service systems are not really made to see everything from everywhere all at once all the time, and I think that also played a huge role. And I know a lot of people in my personal life that are like, yeah, like getting online and doom scrolling, like it's super stressful. And then you end up doing stuff that's actually, self-destructive without really realizing that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real thing, just the fire hose of social media, whether it's everything that is on social media right now with the world being the way that it is, or, even rewinding back a few years when the world was still crazy, but in comparison to now was like Disneyland.
No, totally. I think back to 2016, and I'm like, man, that was a good time.
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
And even seeing your friends like in all of their successes, which like at my core, I want to celebrate all their successes, but like seeing it just constantly on social media, because that's what the algorithm responds to, as it should, it's really hard for me to not take on my friends' goals as my own goals, even if they don't serve me. I heard you say like, oh, you realized that in 2021 you had the things that you were wanting, and I've heard you share the same thing. And it's a constant process for me to check back in with that, because I'll start to feel, I'm like, oh, that looks fun. Oh, that looks fun. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. It's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Even if you do, I think John Moreland was on here, and he also talked about his struggle with feeling jealous. And I am always so thankful when anybody really, like you just did, very honestly shares that, because sometimes I think it's almost like a flex to be like, nah, I'm not jealous, I'm immune to that. And I think they're lying. And I think, especially because social media is designed to do that to us, I think there's a layer of shame that we all feel when we are like burning up with envy. And it's hard because you said it's so painful, and it's painful to like not be in a place where you feel like you're thriving and you're not getting to do the thing you want to do. And you see a friend, even though you know that you're not getting the whole picture, but you're still like, oh God, I want what they have. Or it's so hard to feel happy for them. And then you feel ashamed of yourself for feeling that way. And I think the first step is sharing honestly about that. That releases shame. But also John Moreland said, sometimes it's information. Sometimes it is like a transference that's not helpful. And other times it's information of, oh, I'm feeling this because I do want that experience, or I do want that opportunity. What can I do with that information? How can I shift my focus less on what that they get to do it? And what are some of the steps that I need to do to try and help myself get there, while also having understanding that like maybe it's not meant for me.
Yeah.
Which is also incredibly painful and hard to realize. But not everything that we want or we think we want is actually meant for us.
That was part of that kind of realization of like getting regrounded and re-examining what do I actually want, and having those lines blur between, do I actually want the thing that I'm seeing someone else doing, or is that something that I think that other people will think is impressive. And I want people, and like kind of feeding into that. And I came to the realization, seeing, people getting different opportunities and whatever else, but then also down the lines, in some aspects, I would run into people and kind of get insight. And behind the scenes, like, they're also struggling with stuff. I mean, it's not like it's smooth sailing and everything's amazing 24/7. It's like there's a lot of time and energy and sacrifice that has to be made to be here, there, and everywhere. And looking back on my own experience of how like overwhelmed and kind of miserable I would be at times, it made me realize, well, maybe being all everywhere isn't really for me. Maybe that's not maybe that's not for me, because I don't seem to really enjoy it when I try to do that. So maybe it's time to, again, like you mentioned earlier, like find that middle ground of like, how much do I actually want to be here, there, and everywhere versus being at home. And like, again, that's where doing more studio work and sync writing comes in, where it's like I can find that middle ground of being able to be my little introvert self and like spend as much time alone as I want, and then pick and choose when I want to be out and doing something. And also this, the other thing too, is like being in a position also where now I can say no. Whereas before, you're like getting it together, you're like trying to make a name for yourself or whatever. And there's that feeling of having to say yes. But now I've gotten to a point now where it's like, oh, I can say no now and know that like something else will come if that doesn't work out. And then also discerning, oh, I really want to do this, but I might have to reschedule or move some things around because I really do want to do this, as opposed to being like, well, I guess I have to do it, so I guess I'll find a way to fit it in. And then you show up and you're kind of having to fake it when it's like, well, I didn't really want to do this anyway. But now knowing that I have my position in life and I guess life experience, I'm 39 years old now, so I've had a few years to kind of sort through all this stuff and realize what I really, really enjoy doing and what I don't. And being able to be like, well, yeah, this is going to pay X amount of money, but like, I really don't like this. This isn't fit with my values or whatever the case may be, or I just don't have time. I can't do it. And yeah, just not having to make everything be about, I need money. I got to do this. I got to do this, and to be in that position to, do the things that I want to do. And it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like this idea of like prioritizing what you want to do versus what you feel like you have to do is like something that you like earn. You earn the privilege of being able to focus on just like what you want to do. I don't think that's true, without getting too woo-woo. Unless y'all want to go there, let's go there. But like,
I always like to get
if
woo.
you focus your energy on what you want to do, that will then breed more of that. And your energy will be more efficient. It'll be more fulfilling. It'll turn into like a self-perpetuating thing.
Yeah. Can I read you guys something real quick?
Sure. Let's go.
Yeah. So I'm in grad school for depth psychology of creativity.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's online and it's like a hybrid. So we meet in person once a quarter, but most of it is reading and then writing and interacting with my classmates and my professor online. And my professor, this last week, the assignment was discussing like whether creativity is a religious act. And so we were talking about that, religious, spiritual, whatever you want to call it. And there's different scholars that were arguing for it and against it. And I wrote essentially that I believe that it is. And what happens is it gets muddied up when outside forces enter the room, whether it's commercial or capitalist gain, or even just like emotional gain of wanting attention, wanting somebody to tell us we're good enough by saying they like the thing we made. And so I said, the real question to me is, how do we protect this creativity as a spiritual or religious act, especially for those that are trying to make a living off of it? And I won't read the whole thing, but something that has just really stuck with me that I've been like sharing with all of my songwriting students. She talks about just like nothing is more powerful than self-mastery and psychic sovereignty. And she says, when we are masters of our own house, no one and nothing can push us off kilter. We no longer feel like we have to fight for anything because this mastery does not come through trying to micromanage all the forces of the world. Rather, it comes through a profound sense of detachment from the temporary world of outcomes. total and complete surrender to the will of the divine, to me, that is how we escape that sense of being choked out by the malignant forces of consumerism.
Yeah.
I've always thought, learned about, healthy detachment. But the way that she says it, of a profound sense of detachment from the temporary world of outcomes, it shifted something in my brain. I'm like, yes, like you said, buzz, being invited to all the festivals, being flavor of the month, whatever, all of that's fleeting. But even just one person saying, hey, that's a great song, that's temporary too. Or your style of music being the genre of choice for the year, that's fleeting. Like every single thing is temporary. And when we're not trying to micromanage it or be attached to it, that's when that freedom truly happens for us.
Yeah, I agree with that. It makes me think of one of my favorite books is the Tao Te Ching. And a lot of that book talks about being able to move through the world with a certain level of detachment to where you still enjoy life, but you also accept the light and the dark, the universe as a whole being this symbiotic, somewhat impersonal process that you can't really control. And you have to work within the laws of the universe in order to exist. And your attitude and thoughts about certain situations, and now I'm kind of bleeding a little bit into Buddhist as well. Like Buddhism and Taoism to me are like two schools of thought that they have overlap, and they also really encourage people finding ways to live in a sort of a middle ground where you recognize all of the aspects of being human and living, understanding that there's good and there's bad, and that they coexist and that they overlap, and being able to accept and sit with that can really bring about a certain level of contentment to where you are able to kind of take joy in simple pleasures like just spending time with friends or reading or going on a hike, or just things that are fulfilling, but they're not on one extreme or the other. I really love all that stuff. I'm really also into like Stoicism, also overlaps a lot with those two schools of thought too. It's almost as if ancient wisdom it stays the same regardless of what time period you're in.
Yeah.
It still applies, because, like history and everything's like cyclical. We experience the same things over and over again for thousands of years. I actually read this quote the other day. I think it was from Marcus Aurelius, where he's like, if you observe life for 40 years, it's almost like observing life for 1,000 years. We've been doing the same shit for a really long time.
Yeah.
And like, if we can try to stick with that ancient wisdom aspect, and these words of wisdom, ancient wisdom is throughout all different philosophies and religions. But yeah, it's not always easy to like stick to that thought process, just because things happen in life. We have feelings and emotions and experiences, and just trying to keep that in perspective is a challenge, but it's worth continuing to try, I think.
One of like kind of my guiding approaches and mindsets that I try to return to is that life is just a patchwork of experiences, one after the other. And sometimes they're great and sometimes they're bad, but it's an experience, and it's what makes life life. I also love the Tao Te Ching and Siddhartha and all kinds of Eastern thought and Stoicism. And I mean, even into like Khalil Gibran, which I heard kind of in what you were saying of like, it takes the light and the dark together to create balance. One cannot exist without the other. It's like the whole this too shall pass.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this too shall pass comes to mind quite a bit. Yeah. So yeah.
It's like, so even just being able to, I'm not good at it in the slightest, but like when things are hard and when things are tough and when every minute feels like it takes a year because things are hard, just like, this is temporary. This will pass. This is an experience.
Yeah.
This is the way I'm experiencing this time.
I think, Amythyst, you said it's hard to keep that daily mindset because things happen in life, right? And we have so many forces that are pulling us away from that mindset. But I think that perspective, when we're in practice every day to remind ourselves of it, it also lessens the resistance to the hard times. We live in a society that like doesn't want hard times. We're like, I'm losing money on tours. Like, if only I could be killing it on a tour right now. Like, I don't want this. I want to just be like steady incline, doing better and better all the time. But I think when you accept a lot of these Eastern philosophies, and like what I'm studying in depth psychology is understanding, and we say this all the time on this podcast, is like growth comes from struggle. The biggest expansions that we experience and growth periods are very rarely in times of just ease and success, or what we call success on the surface. So it changes a perspective when you can be like, man, it's tough right now, but that's not a personal failure. That's not because something's wrong with me. That's just how life goes. These periods are to be expected. It's a hard time, but I know I'm going to get through this. Where I think my younger self, when I was first going through deeply hard things, which probably only happened for me for the first time in like the last 10 years, it was so much more painful because it was this resistance of like a tantrum of like, I don't want to be going through this. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Rather than this is life. Of course, this is happening and this is really hard, but it's not going to be forever. And like, there's so much here to learn from and grow from.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, Amythyst, I heard you say a little bit ago, just talking about especially 2021, early 2022, where it's like, everybody's like, cool, we're back on the road. But then there was all these variants, there was cancellations, there was all of this. There was just general change in what the public was doing in regards to buying tickets to shows. That was the era that this whole podcast was built out of. You know, there's a lot of people outwardly like, oh no, everything's great. Yeah, we're good. We're coming back. I got a new record. We're going to hit the road, like blah, blah, blah. And then you sit down at dinner and it's like, this is tough. You know, and everybody was taking it personally. They're like, I'm not selling tickets. I'm not getting the same attention I was getting like 3 years, but it was happening to everybody and everybody was taking it personally. And it's like the whole...
I was taking it personally for sure.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, the whole world has changed. You know, what clued me in was seeing more and more people canceled tours for unforeseen circumstances, including friends that are on a really big level. And then talking to them and finding out that unforeseen circumstances that they didn't foresee losing 80 grand on a tour. Yeah. Obviously. You know, it's like, I would cancel that too, you know, but it's like, it feels so internal when actually it's external there.
Yeah, totally. Another thing that I forgot to mention that was also part of that, I guess, the misery of falling back into the rat race mentality is at that same time, and it started in 2020 when I was at home a lot, and then going out on the road made it really tough as I kind of jumped into what I've learned is called the self-improvement doom loop, where you're constantly, you know, looking at ways to improve nutrition and your fitness and your meditation and like, but everything's connected to like productivity. I was doing all these different health and fitness related things. And even meditation, when I started getting into that, it went from a spiritual thing to then it turned into like, I'm doing all this stuff so I can be more productive and keep up with the rat race. Like everything I was doing was centered around keeping up. One of the things I had to do to get regrounded is I had to cancel my YouTube subscription because I would just obsessively watch like morning routines, night routines. I would look at vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, keto diets. Like I was like fully obsessed with like,
how do I optimize myself?
How do I optimize myself?
Yeah.
And starts out as like, oh, I'm getting some interesting information, but then it devolves as the algorithm goes on. There's only so much you can say about nutrition and fitness. So then it started to evolve into like petty dramas between YouTubers and like just all kinds of. So I was just like, and it left me in this like weird space of like, well, now I know all these different things, and now I have to figure out which one works the best for me. And that's part of like the way my brain works is like, I think about like, how can I improve on something? Is there another experiment that I've not tried yet? Like I'm very curious in that way, but like there has to come a point where I have to stop. And at the end of the day, when I got rid of my YouTube subscription and backed off, over time, I was like, I need to stay hydrated. I need to rest. I need vegetables. I need fiber and I need protein and I need fat. It's like it made everything so much more complicated in my mind. And I was talking to my therapist about this the other day because I actually hadn't seen my therapist like in a year. And I caught her up on all this stuff and talked to her about all this stuff I was saying. And she's like, Amythyst, you probably know more about health and nutrition than most people around you. You know everything you need to know. Stop looking at it. Just do it. One of the flaws of my personality is I'm always worried that I'm not prepared enough to do something. So I will like research and read about something to death as opposed to just doing it. So after hearing her say that, I'm like, okay, well, I was on the right track then of just stopping looking at everything because, like, for example, instead of feeling like, oh, I need to go to the gym like 4 times a week, I have to do that no matter what. Because the issue is when I was created this really unsustainable routine while I was at home during COVID, then I went back on the road and I'm like, I cannot do exactly what I did at home. And it caused great pain and stress. And so what I realized over time is like, okay, I have a routine at home and I have to have a routine on the road. I have to create 2 different systems because I can't keep going on the road and then getting upset because I can't find the restaurant I want to go to, or I can't find the hiking trail or whatever it was that I wanted. I had to just let go of that and just be more flexible and adaptable. So now when I'm at home, instead of being like, okay, I need to go to the gym 4 times a week, what I actually realized is that I was like actually always in pain and injuring myself because I was just doing too much. So now it's like, okay, now that I'm getting back in the gym and I have to start really, really slow, I'm going like once a week. I go until I'm fully healed, and like realizing that like I'm not having to race. I would see people online that like have been working out for like 10 years or are like personal trainers. And in my mind, I'm like, I have to look like that someday.
Yeah.
And I have to hurry, you know? And it's just like, now I'm just like, I'm not in a rush. Take it slow, take it steady. Like, I have to do what is conducive to me. I'm not an athlete. I'm not training to like do a marathon or something. Like, I'm a musician and I tour. So what do I need to do in my life that is actually relative to how I actually am versus forcing myself to do things that are just not sustainable and are actually causing me quite literally pain and injury.
Yeah. And the information out there is endless. So it's like if you follow everything, which it's a full-time job in itself to be doing all the things that you're told to be doing to like take care of yourself, meal prep, whatever. My dad he was a submarine captain for 30 years in the Navy, but he also on the side just like got a master's in holistic nutrition and became a personal trainer. And he's like, everything in moderation, real food. You don't have to work out that much. The stress that you are experiencing from eating a cheeseburger or not getting to the gym is more damaging than eating a cheeseburger and not getting to the gym. Relax.
I was stressed out all the time, anxiety, and I'm like, wait, I thought this was supposed to be helping me. I actually feel terrible.
I mean, to me, it's the same. It's the same thing that we were talking about career stuff. It's like your ego goals versus your heart goals. And your ego's like, yeah, this, and this. Because it feels so good to be like taking this information and optimizing and planning and all of that. But like, if you look at it on paper, you're not actually making any progress. And like, it resonated with me so hard, like what you were saying, because all of that, I have this routine and this and this and this and all of that. And my heart goal is that I want to move slower. I want to be more present. I want to be here in this moment. I want to be relaxed. I physically want to feel energetic, but nimble and light. And meanwhile, I'm stressed the fuck out. I hurt. I have no time.
You're mad at your family for
I'm
not
even
letting
angrier.
you.
I'm angrier at myself because I'm not hitting the unrealistic 28-hour day that I've planned for myself. You know,
exactly.
It's like, wait, hold on a second here. I was right with you on everything you were just saying about like, ingesting all that stuff, like getting really into Eastern thinking and all of that, then very quickly slips into reading like self-improvement books and like all of that, especially when you get into self that isn't necessarily like ancient texts or anything like that. It always starts with like this presumption that where you are right now is flawed and not good. You know, because you're going towards this thing. So like, even if you're like, yes, I'm working towards this thing, like what's also being said, both sides of the coin, the light and the dark, is that like, I'm not enough right now. I'm not okay where I am.
If I do these things, I'll be the better version of myself.
You know, and I was like, I'd be feeling great and like energized because I just read an awesome book. And instead of taking the time to like ingest that book and make these like ideas a habit, I'm like, I want to feel that again. So I started reading another one, and I'm at the beginning of the book where they got to sell their philosophy, so they got to convince me that where I'm at right now sucks. I'm like, this sucks. Oh, I'm flawed. And I'm just like right back to it's like it's its own hamster wheel.
God,
Beware of self-help.
Everything in moderation.
Having to really pull back on the self-help stuff was another big thing, because it was like I had completely lost the plot on all of the stuff that I had originally read. I was like, these people are just scamming us. And then I was like pissed off for a little bit because I'm like, I just totally got scammed. I think at the end of the day with all of that, like it's even more of a reinforcement to go back to that middle ground and realizing that everything that we see is not exactly what it seems. And so
absolutely.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited. We like to end our conversations with the same question, choose your own adventure between the two. And I'm really interested to hear what comes up for you. And so it's either something that someone has told you along the way or that you've read wisdom from someone else that continues to resonate with you and fill your cup, or conversely, it could be something that you wish you knew when you were just getting started in making a career out of your creativity.
Honestly, something that's come up a lot in my mind, especially in the past year or so, has been the story of the tortoise and the hare. And I remember hearing that story as a kid, and you read it and you're like, okay, yeah, the tortoise won because he was taking his time and the hare was a little too full of himself and whatever. But like, I now understand that was wisdom. That was talking about slowing down and slow and steady, not allowing this sense of urgency that you have to hurry up and do something. So that's been something I've been thinking about a lot lately. The more that I slow down, the less that I feel the need to like turn to like emotional eating or, doing any sort of thing that will make me feel better in the short term. If I slow down enough and give myself enough time to think, then I end up having the mental clarity to make better decisions and not having to rely so much on external things to function, I guess.
That is actually a story that I think of a lot as well. I mean, one, we have young children, so it's like I'm at a point I've explained it to our 4-year-old a few times. I'm like, the tortoise won. She's like, but it's slow. But it's like, in hearing you say this, I'm realizing like, wow, it is a parable that like in itself lives that existence. It continues to teach me things. At first, you're like, yeah, I get it. The hare goes fast and he's full of himself, and the tortoise is slow and he takes the time, so he wins. I've known that story for decades now, and I'm still learning from it. I'm like, wow, it's really like that story is living exactly what it says.
Yeah. Man, well, this was so beautiful. I hope we get a chance to hang out again because I feel like we could talk for hours.
Yeah, so. I'd love to. I'd love to revisit like in I don't know, 6 months or a year and just see what's changed
Let's
or
do
something.
It.
Yeah, it'd be cool. I really enjoyed this a lot. I appreciate y'all having me. This has been great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, y'all too.
All right.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.